Hello and welcome to Swipe. Coming up, creatively challenging or the death of the English language. We look at Twitter's influence on how we write. The new Call of Duty game hits our screens, but does it live up to the hype? Driving whilst having a nap, Milton Keynes announced plans to transform its public transport network. And this means war, the best of the rest, in this week's gaming review. But first, some people, like me, use Twitter to break news. Follow me at Sky News Neil. Others use it to keep up with their favourite celebrities. That's pretty much like me as well. But whatever you want to say, the 140 character limit means you can never really get into that much detail. So is that having an effect on how we write? Are truncated sentences and sound bites becoming the norm, or is Twitter bringing with it a new wave of creative writing? Sky's Katie Spencer has been taking a look.
What is cold? Asked Child Helga. The water staring back at you.
Tweeting his couplets 140 characters at a time. T.S. Eliot Prize-winning writer Georges Certis is one of a small but growing number of poets using Twitter as a place to experiment.
It's an intense and brief experience, as you'd expect, really. I mean, and you take it as such. It's like taking a very intense little pill. Yes, because there it is, and it makes a little fizz. And if you're interested in that little fizz, then you go and sort of chase another one.
It may be early days for this modern-day version of the haiku, or as it's been dubbed, the twiku. But within literary circles, writers are seeing the constraints of Twitter as a new challenge.
Dickens used to write his novels as extracts and sort of people would consume them bit at a time. And quite often you can consume a poem in the same way. It's interesting the way one sort of looks at a poem in Twitter.
And it isn't just being used creatively for poetry. Here in the East End of London, a project using real-time tweets is bringing to life the grisly history of Whitechapel, giving people a sense of what life must have been like here 125 years ago when Jack the Ripper stalked these streets.
Some people I've interviewed think the Ripper is a fan. I've had so much work with the paper. The Ripper is paying my rent right now. We've done the police that were involved with the case, but also done residents of the East End. I think it gives people a much more interesting insight and a much more immediate insight into what was going on.
But not everyone agrees that Twitter's influence on how we learn is entirely positive.
Tweet all about it. Fast food verse for computer-fried brains.
Critics believe we're becoming too dependent on technology, and social networking sites are influencing how we process information.
Children have no understanding of how to use a piece of paper and a pencil, and instead they're moving their fingers across the paper as though it were a tablet. This is a disastrous situation. You have to remember that most of poetry through most of time has been written with a paper and a pencil. We're now breeding a generation of youngsters who are being deprived of that particular skill.
Writer Arjun Basu has built a dedicated following with his short story tweets.
The bird fell from the sky and landed at their feet. He wasn't ready to teach his kids about death, so he told them the bird was just stupid. I think more people are reading today than ever before because so much of our communication is based on the written word. In a paradoxical way, I think, Twitter forces you to sort of appreciate the power of every word.
A constant distraction or a place to experiment. One thing critics agree on is that the influence of social media is significant, as tweets play an important role in how language evolves. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, Milton Keynes plans to go driverless. But first, armies of fans lined up to get their hands on Call of Duty Ghosts when it launched this week. The video game made more than $1 billion from its first day sales alone. Not bad, considering it cost around $150 million to make. But 10 years on, is Call of Duty still able to take down its rivals? Well, in a minute, you'll hear from our man in the know, Guy Cocker, who's been testing out all the game's interesting bits. But first, Sky's Joe Tidy caught up with the game's executive producer at Call of Duty's London launch.
Well, it's fair to say the gaming industry is in rude health. These games are making not millions, not hundreds of millions, but billions. So, who will take the crown of being the biggest entertainment franchise? Well, it's all to play for.
We've got the gap between next gen and current gen, so coming a little later, the middle of the month, I think we'll start to see sort of our total numbers. That's really what I'm worried about. I know the day one and week one is the great big news item, and we say it every time we do it, but it's really about getting people playing and making sure that we've got the game that people want to play.
Call of Duty is still one of the biggest game franchises in the world. It takes place in the near future. It's South America this time, oil-rich South America invading the US. Typically sort of Hollywood-style bombastic storyline with lots of set pieces, with lots of stuff blowing up in a spectacular fashion. Again, it's the same multiplayer that we know and love. There are a couple of interesting new game modes that I've played. One where you have to keep racking up kills every 30 seconds, otherwise you explode, and another one where you have to grab the dog tags of the people that you kill and then dump them off at a central bank. So every year Activision, who is the publisher of Call of Duty, put out a ridiculously expensive collector's edition package of Call of Duty with an appropriately silly toy or gadget. In this case, it's a 1080p head-mounted camera, which is used by the ghosts in the game. You can use it to kind of film yourself running around if you want. It films in 1080p. It's actually a pretty good camera. The interesting thing with Call of Duty is they release content throughout the year, so map packs come every couple of months throughout the game, throughout the next year, so this game's lifetime. And this package includes all of that. One accessory that's come out for serious Call of Duty fans is the Turtle Beach Phantom headset, which is a wireless headset. You plug it into your console, and then you have the wireless headset, which I'll just put on here, to wear while you're playing the game, and there's a microphone that comes out of it as well, so you can communicate with your friends. But the real USP of this product is that the manufacturer Turtle Beach has worked with the developers to emphasize certain sounds in the game, so you can get it to emphasize the sound of a grenade coming in or footsteps in the background, which in theory might give you a little bit of an edge. Another product that exists for gamers that play Call of Duty for many, many hours is these glasses, which basically are designed, they've got Call of Duty branding on them. They're designed to reduce eye strain and the glare that you get from playing on a monitor or TV for like 8 hours at a time. In my opinion, you don't really need something like this. Obviously, just make sure you're taking breaks, 15 minutes every hour when you're playing Call of Duty. I don't think they're worth £70, but it's just interesting that this product exists to stop people getting eye strain, which is probably a good thing.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, watch out Han Solo, the Angry Birds are coming. But first, using Google has become an essential part of everyday life for most of us, but typing away at a tablet or keyboard is not the only way to start a search or send a message. Voice control is getting much, much easier. Sky's Martin Stanford went along to the Google House in London to find out more.
We make beautiful food, I mean really sexy food. Look at this.
Sorted Food are a bunch of guys who found success by blending cooking and computers. Their YouTube channel already has over 500,000 subscribers. Now, when you're cooking, your hands are often quite busy. So who better to ask to demonstrate controlling a computer through voice?
I've got 90 grams of sugar in here, or for those of you still working in old measurements,
convert 90 grams into ounces.
90 grams is 3.17 ounces.
It's great that that's to 3 decimal places.
You always need ounces to 3 decimal places.
Today we're showcasing how Google can make technology work around you, and you can now talk to Google rather than just typing something into a box and having to sift through 10 links to find an answer. You can ask Google a question or even have a conversation with Google to get the answer or the information we want much quicker and much more clearer.
And talking of conversations, imagine you're on that perfect ski holiday and you meet somebody who doesn't talk the same language.
Guten Abend, wie geht es Ihnen?
Because this is where Google Translate can help.
Good evening, how are you?
So while all this electronic assistance is potentially very helpful, should we be concerned that these conversations, these private conversations, are ending up on Google servers?
All this technology is opt-in, so you have to choose to come into this technology. And once people are in it, they realize the benefits and the assistance they get from these types of things is amazing.
And now for a first for me. This is my first chance to have a look at this, Google Glass. This is the amazing little projection device down here, which gives me the chance to read what I can on the screen. So glass is off. They haven't quite matched the prescription for my peculiar eyes just yet, but they're working on that apparently. Some 10,000 people in the United States are all experimenting with these and seeing how they fit in with their lives. So if I want to turn this device on, a little nod of the head. In the top corner, I can now see the fact the time of day is displayed, and I can try and talk to it. So if I say, OK Glass, I then get a series of options. I could say, Google, who is the Prime Minister of England? David Cameron is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Well, there you go. This can also do all sorts of other things apart from just find out basic facts, of course. I could send a text message, I could maybe email somebody. You can't buy Google Glass right now. In fact, you might never be able to buy it. Google are treating this as an experiment in wearable technology. And they're using the opportunity to explore still further the idea of voice control and voice interaction with our phones, tablets and other devices. Martin Stanford, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, the birds are back, and this time they're angry in space. But first, here's a roundup of anything you might have missed over the last few days. World Wide Web creator Sir Tim Berners-Lee has hit out at UK and US spy agencies. He's described the encryption cracking, making headlines of late, as appalling and foolish, and says there needs to be a full and frank public debate on surveillance. How do you fancy reading the paper as you drive to work? Well, head to Milton Keynes, it's the future. The city has announced plans to introduce a driverless public transport system which could see electric vehicles like this ferrying people across town. It's thought General Motors' NV Pride electric vehicles will be used. 100 pods are going to be introduced by 2015. But don't be expecting to get where you're going much quicker. Speeds are expected to top out at around 12 miles per hour. Chinese telecom giant Huawei is promising to sink over £350 million into bringing 5G to market. The company's predicting the next generation wireless networks will be able to reach speeds that are 100 times faster than today's 4G. Its goal is to start a commercial rollout by 2020. McDonald's is said to be looking into using 3D printers to dish up kids' meal toys to order. The fast food chain's UK director, Mark Fabes, said they'd love to offer the choice, and they're exploring if it could work. Watch out Robocop. This impressive idea by students from the University of Pennsylvania is designed to boost human strength. The battery-powered robotic arm was the winner of this year's 2013 James Dyson Award. The exoskeleton design is aimed at helping people with back injuries regain control of their muscles. Well, gaming-wise, you'd be forgiven for thinking Call of Duty Ghosts was the only game to play this week, but think again, there were other releases, an alternative first-person shooter and the return of some angry feathered friends. Games guru James Jarvis has been taking a look.
Battlefield 4 is set in the year 2020, which is 6 years after its predecessor of Battlefield 3, and you play Wrecker, who's part of a special squadron called Tombstone. Each level does have a lot of good set pieces in it, so if you think of it as sort of like a Jason Statham film in terms of plot and action, you probably get the good idea of where it's going to go. New additions to the game is the ability to mark targets for your squad to shoot at, although every now and then your squad probably aren't so good at actually hitting the targets and you're left to do a lot of the heavy work. And this edition of the series certainly ups the game with Levolution. Now Levolution is a big game-changing events that happen in the map, such as a skyscraper falling down or the entire level getting flooded, which means you have to then choose your tactics differently. It's great in squad formation, and if you can get together with a bunch of friends, it's definitely really good fun. Angry Birds Star Wars 2 has come to PC, and it should be around £10 that you can pick it up for. If you're familiar with Angry Birds, you probably get the concept already, except this time the birds are replaced with characters that all have special powers. When you start the game, you'll start on the light side, and after playing through for a little bit, you get to choose if you want to move over to the dark side. Once this is opened up, you can then choose at any point to switch between the light or the dark side, which opens up a whole load of other characters. The backdrops are drawn beautifully like they are in all of the Angry Birds games, and there's a few nice little additions like catapults and magnets that attract your birds' helmets to them so they take you off course, which adds another element to avoid in the game. It's still a massive time sink even if you've got loads to do, and it's definitely one that I will keep playing.
Just go slow, little buddy. You'll be fine.
Behold Knack! Knack is out on the PlayStation 4 on the 14th of November in the US and on the 29th here in the UK, and is developed at least in part by PlayStation 4 system architect Mark Cerny.
He will be invaluable in the fight against the goblins.
The story takes the whole end of the world thing into account again, but this time it's being attacked by goblins. Luckily, there's a doctor there, and not quite so evil scientist, who has been studying ancient relics. He's found a way to fuse these ancient relics together and give them a consciousness, and thus Knack is born to go and protect the world. While playing the game as Knack, you can go around and smash objects which unlock more of these relics, and he can grow from a 3-foot creature into a giant wrecking machine. The game plays a lot like the old Crash Bandicoot games in the way that there's a couple of buttons for smashing and jumping, and the way that it's got some quite light platforming elements in it. We're probably not that far away from playing a game that actually looks like an animated movie.
Hey, over here!
From what I've played of Knack so far, it's certainly one that's a lot of fun, and certainly one that convinces your partner that you're just buying the game for the kids while having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, that's a lot for this week. Remember, you can catch up with the breaking tech stories all week on Sky News for iPad, our smartphone apps, and skynews.com. We'll see you next time.